It's safe to say that Pokemon fans are living in a world of nostalgia. Like most fans, we love the first generation of Pokemon the most, and we also think that the first anime series was the best one. Pokemon pretty much dominated every 90 kid's childhood. But as we got older, we started looking back at one of our favorite franchises and realized there's a lot of mysteries, unanswered questions, and plot holes surrounding it. When someone turns 10 in the Pokemon world, it's a really big deal. You could finally get your Pokemon trainer's license and begin your journey to become a Pokemon master. That all sounds good and fun, but it isn't something your typical 10-year-old would do. Would a 10-year-old infiltrate a headquarters full of Team Rocket baddies who you've never seen in your life? We don't think so. Would a 10-year-old leave his home to travel the world with just his 1 to 6 Pokemon? Doubtful. No 10-year-old in real life would ever even think of doing any of this. Now, we think the reason 10-year-olds are given so much freedom in Pokemon could be due to two things. Either the Pokemon world is so peaceful that 10-year-olds can just wander around and never have anything bad happen to them, or the Pokemon world is full of terrible parents. Honestly, it's probably a bit of both. When you encounter your rival Blue on the SS Anne in Pokemon Red and Blue, he has a Raticate. Nothing weird there, it's a rather common Pokemon, but things get spooky once you battle him in Lavender Town. Because for some reason, his Raticate isn't with him anymore. As you know, Lavender Town is the center of many Pokemon conspiracy theories, and this one is no different. The Pokemon Tower is located in Lavender Town and was created to honor deceased Pokemon. If we put 2 and 2 together, does that mean Gary's Raticate died? Is he actually in Lavender Town to pay his respects to his Raticate before moving along on his journey? There's a theory that your player injured the Pokemon on the ship, and Gary wasn't able to bring his Raticate to a Pokemon Center in time. It's a really sad story, but there's no proof that it happened. Since we first saw Cubone, they've been one of our favorite Pokemon here at CBR. Seriously, they're adorable, but the Pokemon has a pretty tragic backstory. The story of a mother Marowak protecting its baby Cubone from Team Rocket was featured in Pokemon Origins, and was one of the first moments in the Pokemon world that featured the idea of a violent death. It was very different from the usual Pokemon plots. However, there's one thing about the Pokemon that we just can't shake off, and that is its Pokédex entry. According to the entry, Cubone wears the skull of its deceased mother. Its cries echo inside the skull and come out as a sad melody. That's really depressing, and one heck of an interesting way to honor your dead mother. But does this mean that all Cubones lose their mothers at birth? We definitely wouldn't want to be a female Cubone, that's for sure. We like to look at the Pokeball as a home for Pokemon, but have you ever actually thought about what it's like to be in one? There are 2 explanations for what it might be like. The first theory states that Pokeballs are digitizing tools, meaning that the Pokemon does exist in the Pokeball, but the Pokeball alters their DNA. In other words, when you catch a Pokemon, they undergo a metamorphosis of sorts, which allows them to faint and not die when they're defeated. While we could probably make an entire video about the first theory, the second one is the one that makes more sense, since it comes from the mouth of Junichi Masuda, the director of Pokemon. According to him, the Pokemon shrink when inside the Pokeball, and it's not a crowded space. It's comfortable like a room in a high-end hotel. We like this theory. In the video games, we never hear about the player's dad, but it's assumed that he's a Pokemon trainer doing his own thing in a different region. In fact, this is exactly what's said in a Japanese magazine. In a fake interview, Ash is asked about his father, and he said he was on his own journey and they might cross paths again. Even Masamitsu Hidaka, the original director of the Pokemon anime, said in an interview on Poke Beach that Ash's grandfather and dad both became Pokemon trainers, which is why you never see them. Another theory believes that Ash's dad died in the Great Pokemon War. According to this theory, the Great Pokemon War was fought between humans and Pokemon, and it's the reason why there's so little adult men in the Pokemon world. It's a fascinating theory that we covered already, so check it out right after this video if you haven't already. The Pokemon universe seems to take place in a completely different universe than our own, yet there have been plenty of times when real-life places were mentioned in the video games. Lieutenant Surge is known as the Lightning American in Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green. According to the Pokemon Mansion, Mew was discovered in the jungles of Guyana. In the Pokemon anime, Misty dreams of Paris and the Eiffel Tower. While Japan isn't mentioned in the video games or anime, all the Pokemon regions are clearly based on Japan. The geography of each Pokemon region is strikingly similar to that of Japan as well. This leads us to believe that Pokemon does indeed take place in an alternate reality of the world we live in. especially considering the setting of the upcoming Pokemon Sword and Shield games. They take place in a region that looks a lot like the United Kingdom. In the first 2 generations, we had no idea what HMs and TMs looked like, but we knew they were machines that taught our Pokemon moves. When Gen 3 came along and we learned that HMs and TMs are discs, it raised a few eyebrows. How could a disc help a Pokemon learn a move? Do we load the disc up into a computer and let the Pokemon watch a video on the screen to learn the move? Well, remember earlier when we mentioned that the Pokeball may be a digitizing tool? If we could load Pokemon into a computer to store them, then using discs to teach them new moves makes sense. The thing is, when you need to get a move deleted, wouldn't you need to follow a similar process? Instead, the move deleter doesn't use a computer or anything. He just goes poof and your Pokemon doesn't know the move anymore. The SS Anne was everyone's favorite cruise ship that docked in Vermilion City and sailed the world. It was fun to board the ship and fight all the trainers on board since it was easy experience to help level up our Pokemon, and the second you could get off the ship, it sailed away. One of the weirdest theories about the SS Anne is that if you beat the entire Elite Four enough times, it'll return to the docks of Vermilion City, but it never does. In fact, in the anime and manga, the SS Anne actually sinks and never sails the seas again. Not even in the Johto region when you're back in Vermilion City in Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal. So where the heck did it go? It just disappeared and never to be seen again. It must be a ghost ship of sorts. The main point of playing Pokemon is for those intense battles, but have you ever taken a step back and wondered how they're even legal? Think about it. While animal fighting is allowed in certain places around the world, it's typically an activity that's very much frowned upon. So in a world with such awesome creatures like Pokemon, they're being used in competitive battles everywhere you turn. It's a little bit of a head-scratcher if you ask us. Sure, Pokemon battling is heavily sanctioned like boxing and MMA, but the truth is that Pokemon are fighting for the entertainment of humans. And sometimes unwillingly, since they disobey orders. No matter how many sanctions or precautions are taken by the Pokemon League, the competitors will inevitably get injured, and some of them may even die. Another odd thing about Pokemon battles is that the victor earns some winnings. Sure, it's very common to earn a reward for a victory in an RPG game, but the fact that some 10-year-olds are making money from battling Pokemon is a little odd. In Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green, Professor Oak makes it clear that you earn money from defeating other trainers, and you have to pay up if you lose them. If 10-year-olds are already betting, then it looks like the entire Pokemon world must have a gambling problem. In fact, it seems like it's completely legal for anyone with a Pokemon trainer license to gamble, since you could walk into and use a game corner without an issue. Pokemon don't come across as the most intelligent creatures, but that's because all they do is say their names, especially in the anime. It's a bit more useful there since we actually might not know what the Pokemon is beforehand. In the video games, we see this less. The Pokemon have their own cries that you hear in the Pokemon menu or when sending them out to battle. Since you could just read their name on the screen, you don't need to hear them say it all the time. Junichi Masuda, the director of Pokemon, talked about the whole "why can't Pokemon speak" ordeal in an interview with Game Informer. He said he wasn't really sure about the whole thing, but Ikue Otani of OLM Inc. voice acted for Pikachu and it sounded super cute, so they rolled with it and it worked out. We were only introduced to Pokemon genders in Generation 2. As you may already know, there are plenty of Pokemon who don't have any gender, and most of them are legendary. Since there's only one of each legendary Pokemon in the world, they can't breed because they need a member of the opposite sex of the same species. Now, Latios and Latias are male and female respectively, but they're both different species of Pokemon, so they can't breed. You can even have Pokemon like Ditto who are genderless and often used to breed with all one-gender Pokemon since they could shapeshift and act as a member of the opposite sex. It's weird, but it works, and these non-legendary genderless Pokemon must reproduce asexually. All one-gender Pokemon are just as confusing. How do you breed and increase the population if your species is made up of just the same gender? We doubt they all use Dittos to breed, so it's really odd. For whatever reason, there are plenty of Pokemon who grow extra heads when they evolve. Now, we know Dugtrio somehow grows 2 extra heads through evolution, but it's confirmed that they're all attached to the same body, so let's look at the others. Doduo is a flying-type Pokemon with only 2 heads, but gains a 3rd head when evolving into a Dodrio. According to Pokédex entries, when Doduo evolves, one of its heads splits in 2 to create the 3-headed Dodrio. But how are all 3 heads the same size then? Wouldn't it then have 1 normal-sized head and 2 smaller ones? Coughing is a poison-type Pokemon who's a Team Rocket favorite. As you know, it evolves into Weezing, who has 2 heads. It turns out Weezing is created when 2 Coughings fuse together, which could take years. One head looks bigger than the other, but they're constantly inflating and deflating. We need answers. We're going to go ahead and just assume that Pokemon have similar habits to the animals of our world and that a food chain exists. Would an Ursaring try to eat humans if they thought they were a threat? If not, then do they run around eating wild Pidgeys and Rattatas? This is an idea introduced later in the series where we learned that Cubones are prey to Mandibuzzes. For the humans who live in the world of Pokemon, is there an unwritten rule against eating Pokemon? Are there Pokemon that you can and can't eat? Magikarp are pretty useless, so could you just fry them up? The Pokemon Tower in Lavender Town is the resting site for deceased Pokemon, and is the first moment when the idea of death is addressed in the series. And it's in the first game, so they didn't waste much time. While it's possible that many of the Pokemon there died of natural or accidental causes, how many of them died in battle? We know for sure that a Marowak definitely died protecting her Cubone child, but which of these Pokemon died in Apollo Creed from Rocky IV fashion? After all, battling is a contact sport, and some Pokemon moves are very powerful. So it's quite possible and probable that at least a few of the dead spirits that haunt the gravesite died in battle. Knowing this would tarnish the reputation of the sport. It's possible that the organizers decided to conceal the truth from the public on purpose. Ain't that a conspiracy theory? There was a scene in the first season of the Pokemon anime where we see Gary Oak carrying 10 badges. Gary Oak may be one heck of a good Pokemon trainer, but how is it possible to earn more than 8 badges in a single region? Well, it turns out that the gym badges Gary showed Ash mostly came from gyms that weren't accounted for in Kanto. Plenty of those badges were unlike any we've seen so far in the games, which led to a lot of speculation, but they simply weren't badges from official gyms. Some fans decided to take a deeper look into the video games to see if there were supposed to be more gyms, and it turns out that's exactly the case. Other Pokemon gyms may have been planned for the Kanto region since there are unused names for several gym badges in the code of Pokemon Red and Blue. Lance is a member of the Elite Four in Pokemon Red and Blue, and became the champion in Pokemon Gold and Silver. Of course, in the manga, he's responsible for a lot of casualties in his attempt to rid the world of Pokemon abusers, but hey, it happens sometimes. In the anime, we also see Lance make a few appearances here and there. Like most characters in the anime, Lance wondered what the heck Team Rocket was up to, especially regarding the Lake of Rage. We later learned that Lance is a member of a secret group known as the G-Men, who are tasked with dealing with people who mistreat Pokemon. However, this is one of the few mentions of the G-Men. The organization is mentioned again in the next episode and again about 100 episodes later, but the storyline doesn't go anywhere. We'd love to learn more about the G-Men, but it seems to be a forgotten plot point. Mulvone was one of the first to encounter the ghost girl of Lumiose City, and saying she's creepy is an understatement. If players enter a certain building in the city, they could take the elevator to another floor and trigger the event. The lights will flicker, the music will stop, and a ghost girl will come out of nowhere behind you. All she says is, "No, you're not the one," before disappearing. You could even find her in another building where she says, "Don't talk to me. If you do, I won't hear the elevator." Interesting. When the developers were asked about the character, their answer was, "We didn't put anything like that in the game." Very funny, guys. Seriously, who is she? Pokemon Diamond and Pearl saw the introduction of Arceus, the Pokemon god who supposedly created everything, including humans. The only way to get the Pokemon was through events held by Game Freak directly, but there was supposed to be another way to catch the Pokemon. In the files of Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, there's an item called the Azure Flute that was supposed to take players to Spear Pillar, where they could fight and possibly catch Arceus. Unfortunately, the Azure Flute was never officially released, so players weren't able to challenge the Pokemon god. According to Junichi Masuda, the Azure Flute mechanic was too complicated, but we're not buying it. The item would have worked flawlessly. We just think they only wanted a select few players to have Arceus and not make the god accessible to all. Also, what would have happened if you accidentally beat Arceus instead of caught him? Now that's definitely too complicated. The first time we encountered the glitch Pokemon Missingno, we were freaking out. Just picture this. You're an 8-year-old playing Pokemon Red, fishing just outside of Cinnabar Island, when out of nowhere you encounter a Pokemon that looks like, well, a glitch. It sounds like a Nidoran, but looks like a barcode. It's the legendary Missingno, derived from missing number. Many people believe that Missingno was supposed to be the 152nd Pokemon of the original 151, but was cut for some unknown reason. The fact that it has a unique cry that sounds similar to Nidoran's but doesn't have an echo is really interesting, but doesn't support the theory at all. According to the data, it seems like Missingno was just put into the game for technical reasons and was never expected to be obtainable. In the end, it ended up becoming one of the most well-known glitches in video game history. And those are just some of the biggest Pokemon mysteries. What's your biggest unanswered question? Are there any that we might have missed? Are you excited for Pokemon Sword and Shield? Let us know in the comment section below, and don't forget to subscribe for the latest and greatest videos from CBR. Thanks for watching.